record now anyway. Okay, so recording is started. But yeah, so the idea is to with OBS you can also stream out to Twitch as well, or
That's
to
cool.
something else. So it's a work in
Maybe better than
progress.
YouTube.
I'm sorry.
Maybe better than YouTube.
Uh,
It has replay, right?
I can't do it on YouTube at the moment, but we could do it to, like I said, we can do it to Twitch. Twitch
Yeah.
is where all the cool kids are anyway, so let's hello fellow kids.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do our intro. Welcome to Apropos. We talk about Clojure, some news, some opinions, and sometimes we jump into the REPL. And it gets recorded, we put it on YouTube, but the live video is on Discord. And so if you are watching this on YouTube, check the show notes. There's a link. It'll give you everything you need to find us on Twitter, on Discord, and link back to YouTube if you need to get back there. So if you are live, welcome, and thanks for watching. Looks like we have at least a couple people watching us live, which is pretty cool. Uh-oh, someone's calling for a REPL. I guess you like it, huh, Practicali? You like our REPL. Let's jump into the show chat. So we're on Discord. It's new tech. We're still figuring it out, but I think it's working out pretty well so far. We have a chat room. There's a whole bunch of people live in the chat. Honestly, they probably have it open in a tab, like you know, one of their 3,000 tabs that they have open. They don't even know it's there. But
we're coming up to
we have
150 people on the server, though.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, you know, we had a lot of trouble with YouTube, and now we're migrating over. Who's that? Who just joined? Sakali? Rainbow Bamboo, welcome.
Yeah.
See, they're all in Discord, and they are...
Is trying. Some of the names are amazing.
Should we do the thing with the screen where it just focuses on people with their cameras on? I remember we did that last time.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Here we go.
I've done that.
Okay, so whoever's recording it needs to
we're recording with just the
right.
Just the
cool. Okay, so let's get to business. We have a quorum of a panel today. We have Ray.
Hello.
Mia.
Hello.
And I am Eric. So first on the docket, we have some CLI changes. The CLI has some command line switch changes. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just one thing basically. The only reason it's a little bit interesting is just because of like the cultural norm that we have. You know, if this was Node.js or something, it would be like
there would be changes every week.
Yeah, you know, yeah. It's you know, it's only kind of like news, if you like, because it's unusual for things to change.
Right.
So the idea is that if you're using an alias, normally today at least, with the old system, you use -A to start things on the command line. So if you had an alias to start your system or run your tests or whatever, then you'd use A. But now they want A's only to affect the class path. So you use -A
and not load a namespace.
Yeah, not for the
main namespace.
Not for starting things, okay. So not for the main namespace. So this -M option, which apparently was always lurking there, is now the one they favour, and they're gonna put out deprecated messages for -A if you use it with a main namespace. But you know, it as I say, it's completely trivial. So it's only really interesting because, you know, we're not used to breaking changes. So everyone's losing their shit about it, you know.
It's funny.
The
So you
tiniest of
used to
all
be able to
changes.
like put a whole program in an alias that included the main namespace to run and maybe even some arguments to that main function all in the alias. So you could do like -a:\test and it would run your tests, and you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I think basically the idea is because there's a lot of things have mains, like test runners have mains and stuff like that. So
So you'd have to know the name of you'd have to do the alias for test to load your test namespaces and put a -m like test.runner or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually ran afoul of this making a little toy API recently. I was surprised to get yelled at by my when I tried to actually run my program. It's a little confusing because so you'll get yelled at, and it'll say it's deprecated. But the documentation for how to actually call a main function with arguments at the time, this was a few weeks ago, was not present. So I don't know if they added it since then, but I think that it's a little bit. I would like to see, if you're going to have a pretty verbose, this has been deprecated, please use -m warning anyway, it'd be nice to have it actually written out with how you're supposed to do it, because it took some trial and error after that to get it running.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I've asked around on the Slack for a kind of write up of it, and I got this change log. So it's a bit weird, but I don't know because my assertion was, maybe it's because it's a tool thing. It's all related to this tool's depth stuff. It's all in alpha anyway. So, according to the law of rich, they can break whatever the fuck they want. But it's like, but someone was saying that actually these tools namespace, these CLI has never been marked as alpha. So maybe that one, should have been marked as alpha if it was going to be having a break and change. But who cares?
Really? I think it's fine to change it. Tell people.
Of course, you can change things. I agree. Communication was not great. Yeah, and it still isn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So come on, Alex.
Yeah, that's all it needs is a line that says replace -m.
Hey?
Yeah. All it needs is a line that says replace -a with -m, because that's not clear. It just says don't use -a anymore, use -m. You're like, oh, how?
Yeah.
So just a little bit, this is the first entry point for people. Like the first thing someone's going to want to do is write a program and run it. It's like, oh, I'm not allowed to run it the way that's been documented, but I don't know how to run it.
Yeah. And anyway. To be totally honest as well, I don't know. I feel like this command line thing is out of control. It's so many flags and so many options. The shell script for it is crazy. What's interesting, by the way, is that Mikhail Borkent, the Babashka guy, has written a version of the Clojure, the CLJ, for Windows using Babashka. And but the nice thing about that, of course, is you can write shell scripts with Clojure. So really, come on, Alex, use Babashka for everything because it's much better.
They'll never do that. They want few dependencies.
Anyway,
because you'd need Babashka installed to run Clojure.
Yeah, the whole point of this is
no. It's a single executable. It's not. It's like because it's a Graal VM thing. You just distribute it.
So you can just bundle in the executable with
Clojure
with the CLJ.
Yeah. So actually, it's a nicer installation experience.
Okay. I still think that they don't like the dependency, but I agree with you. Bash scripts
likes
can
writing
get really
2,000 lines Bash scripts?
Who has written Bash and not just copy pasted and modified? That's what I want to know.
I've spent years of my life writing Bash code. Yeah. In fact, born shell code. In fact, but Bash was all this new fancy stuff.
Okay.
Apparently not the guy who can write Bash and not Google every other line. It's Ray.
Yeah.
Yes, we found him.
#bang Ray. Yeah.
He's the original. Before it was Bash.
Yeah.
I bashed before it was Bash.
Before it was born again, I was there.
Used to be just shell.
It did. Used to just be SH. Yeah, that was the.
Did you actually invent the tabs versus spaces argument? Like we go back to Usenet and there's some like original post like, should I use tabs or spaces? And then
funnily enough, I don't have opinions on that, and so yeah, I'm
okay.
Someone did some kind of analysis on that, and they found that engineers that use spaces were paid more.
Right, I saw that.
Which I assume has to do with conventions in languages, right? Because I'm guessing that like maybe although it doesn't really. I mean, are there languages that conventionally use tabs versus spaces?
Yeah,
because
like
it's always
make files. You have to use tabs.
Python as well.
You have to use tabs in Python. I thought you use spaces.
Well, I think
at least as long as
you have to have it. I thought okay, probably you can use tabs or spaces, I guess, but the language is kind of aligned, isn't it? You align on.
Yeah.
Certain indentation.
I think it's a problem of tooling. People have poor tooling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I don't want to hit the space bar that many times, so let me hit tab.
Yeah.
And if they just had a tool that did it right for them.
Well, that's the nice thing about using IntelliJ
Emacs
or Emacs is that you never care about that kind of stuff.
I was working for a company and we would pair program occasionally. One time I jumped on a pair and they were doing the typing and they were using a regular text editor to edit Haskell. I know. I was like, are you serious? And I could hear their mechanical keyboard ka-chunk ka-chunk hitting space. I was like, oh my goodness.
Okay, well that's like the most like stereotypical I'm a cool Haskell guy story. Like, no, I don't need any help from my editor. I do Haskell.
Yeah, right. I use Ed. I just tell it line 3, baby. JKL.
No, that's actually, I'd like to see a breakdown like tabs, spaces, and I don't know. My editor does it for me.
That's a good one.
I mean,
I wonder if you could find some correlation between like well-formatted code, meaning like consistently formatted, versus like just messy code, and like with how much money they make.
Well, because consistently formatted implies that you're using a
machine is doing it for you.
Yeah, it implies tooling, right? Like that's the whole point. Tooling to get rid of the mess.
Yeah. Was there like a third category of people who use both, like files with both spaces and tabs in them? Because
that's chaotic.
It's like, I don't care which one you choose, but choose one.
We're off topic.
Okay.
Come on.
We've degenerated into a tabs versus spaces argument.
Into one of the oldest discussions.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so another thing in the show notes that we have is Clojure 10.2 has been in alpha since March. There's been a few releases. Looks like some bug fixes. I don't know if there's anything really to talk about there.
I feel like we've all kind of been in alpha since March.
Good one. But there's some pretty early numbers, like, Jira numbers your tickets. One of them is 1,364. So when is that one from? First reported. Oh, not too far back. December of 2019. maybe that's. Maybe it doesn't number them sequentially. Because some of them are
the
old.
earliest reported. Yeah, I want to know now what's the earliest reported open bug.
1187 is from December 2018. That one was fixed. Anyway, it's just interesting how slow these things appear. You know, it was 2 years ago, and it had a patch. You know, the patch was ready, and I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, like, are there? Here's like an interesting, you know, thought experiment. Like, how many of these? You know, they're all reviewed, right? All the patches are reviewed, and that's purportedly what takes so long, because the patch is ready, it tests, everyone's like, yes, thumbs up, and then it takes 2 years. And how many are reviewed and rejected, right? So maybe there's a reason there's a long process. It's because, well, you know, this one got through and it took 2 years, but there were like 10,000, or there's not that many. There's, you know, 600 that we rejected on the way. Like, after everyone said thumbs up, you know, let's say Rich read it and was like, no.
Is it my imagination, or can you not sort Jira tickets by time created? You can't sort them by date, can you?
Let's see. I don't know. All issues. Status, type, advanced search. Wait, yeah, order by created, and you can do, CLJ1. Yeah, you can do that.
Okay. I found search by created, but I can't find the order. Oh, did you switch to JQL? Yes, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, so CLJ1, it is.
Okay.
Add chunk support to map filter et al.
Let's find the earliest open.
Fixed in 1.1. Earliest open, yeah. Let's see. Status.
Ordered by created ask.
CLJ2 is still open. Scopes.
Add the scope system for dealing with resource lifetime management.
Rich
2010.
wrote it himself.
It's a 10-year-old ticket.
Add the scope system for dealing with resource lifetime management. I guess that never happened. Put on the backlog. Okay. CLJ5. Sequential destructuring of map gives confusing error message.
CLJ5 seems like it would not be that hard to fix.
We're off topic again, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. This is, you know.
We're getting a lot of.
Also, if we're going to do that, we should definitely share that screen, you know, because.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
You're right. Okay, let's go back on topic. I just thought it was interesting that.
Oh yeah, it's okay.
They're still progressing, you know. It doesn't look like there's any new features. It's just a bunch of fixes. But
I'm just glad we got another SpaceMax user in the chat here.
What's that?
I'm glad we got another SpaceMax user in the chat.
Ah.
What was I going to say?
Okay.
So, yeah, I think obviously this buyout has taken a while in terms of, like, you know, getting things sorted out there. Probably has distracted a little bit from putting things forward. But I don't know. It to me it's interesting. You know, what's going on with 111? Is 111 doing anything? Is there a branch for 111? I don't know actually.
I don't know. Is there a plan for that? I haven't heard anything about one.
Well, I mean, there must be a 111. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I wonder to what extent everything is on hold now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's always been a mystery what's going on, and yeah.
Well, now Yeah, I presume that Nubank's needs are gonna come first.
And they have broken off quite a bit of the stuff into libraries, right? So um, there's tools depths, there's um, Spec, it's its own library. And speaking of Spec, let's move on to the next topic. So I'm quite fascinated by the implications of this new library called Malli, Malli. It's called Data-Driven Schemas for Clojure and Clojure Script. This is by the folks at Medicine out in Finland, and it's been funded by Clojurists Together, which of course is voted on. The funding is voted on. So obviously there is some need for it out in the community. And it's, it's definitely impinging on the Spec territory.
Oh yeah.
A lot of similar use cases. And so I haven't used much of Spec or Malli. So I'm really curious about what this is all about. Is it because Spec is taking too long? Is it because a lot of the answers to like, how do I do this with Spec is like, well, you just shouldn't do that. I mean, that's my experience when I read the chats about Spec from Cognitect. So I don't know. What's going on here?
Well, I mean, I went to a talk about that at Clojure Trail last year in Finland. When we had conferences in real life. Yeah, and they're really nice folks. The medicine folks doing great stuff.
You could share a sauna safely.
I didn't.
You could breathe each other's hair.
Yeah. But I think what they're interested in is they're a bunch of like the Jux people or whatever. I guess there's lots of companies around that are consultants and they want something practical to work with. And I think the idea of Malli is to try and bring together a whole bunch of tools around the Spec space. So it should coexist with Spec. I don't think no one's saying that the Spec is wrong or that it's a bad idea, but it needs some extra things to make it more like supercharged. So a lot of these tools are built to to help with the way that you write specs and to help with the way that you write schemas based on specs. And then it's got all kinds of facilities around, working with JSON data and other sort of data types, not just Clojure Eden. So it's much more kind of like, what should we say, it's less of an island mentality, It acknowledges that, other systems exist and that, especially if you're in a consulting environment where you're doing lots of integrations, then, those kind of facilities are kind of often like the worst bit of plumbing, So it's nice to have like first class support for those kind of ingestion pipelines and that kind of stuff. And it has all sorts of nice things where you can present it with data and it will tell you what the schema should be. Things like that,
Huh.
So you can
kind of back and forth.
Yeah, and it's using a lot of the libraries that have been written around Spec to sort of to do like spell checking and to do like configuration checking and all these kind of things, so you get a nice experience as a developer when you're writing these things. So you see the errors, you see the problems, you see the misconfigurations very quickly.
Oh, interesting.
So at its core, it's definitely about kind of interoperability and but it's very flexible. My experience of it is that it needs a bit of a steeper learning curve than Spec is, and Spec is already a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't go in there thinking, oh yeah, because it's not Spec, it's going to be like super. It's very simple, but it's also you have to read a lot to make it work. Think about it, and I think it's a very interesting project. We're using it at the moment for kind of like for system configurations, So if we want a different configuration for laptop development to CI to other things, then one of the problems with Spec is it's very difficult to have kind of dynamic changes to your configurations or to represent those possible dynamic configurations, let's say. But with this thing, you can do it relatively straightforwardly. So it has the option, for instance, like Spec 2 is meant to have to say, okay, it's open schema by default, but you can put a closed keyword on it, and then it will close the spec. So all kinds of nice affordances like that.
I think the hiccup syntax is a good value add here.
Yes.
One of the problems with writing straight spec is it's not ergonomic to write necessarily. It's because you don't write it like anything else in Clojure.
Right. And the other thing about it being represented as data, and I wonder if this is the like canonical form, because I felt like once you made a spec in Clojure, it was like a black box. You didn't know what it did anymore, and it was not inspectable. So a lot of things that I would think would be like, you're in a Lisp. You want things to be first class. You want to be able to work with them and use your language to operate on them. Things like, how can you check if you're not using a spec, right? Let's say you've defined a spec, but it's not being used anywhere in your code. Like you don't use that keyword. It would be nice to know that, or also the opposite. Like, do I have any keywords that don't have specs for them? Those kinds of things. You could imagine how you could write them if you had a data representation of your spec.
Yeah.
But it's just this weird object that you can't really introspect on.
Yeah, I was really excited about this thing when I saw that. When I saw who did it and that they were using lessons from Reedit. I really like Reedit. I think it's fantastic. It's
just for the audience. Reedit is a router, right? Like a URL to handler kind of thing.
And they use that hiccup syntax for that too. And I feel like it's within the Mitosin ecosystem, we're kind of getting this canonical form that's coalescing around the hiccup syntax. And it's nice because once you know one part of it, you can go into the rest of the stack and look around and know what's going on. I think that because there is this disagreement around, people are using spec for all kinds of things, and then Cognitect says, oh, that's not what spec is for. Having something like Malli, like having tooling where spec doesn't have to be for that, because you can have the tooling around the spec to make it for what you're actually using it for. It gets rid of that argument entirely. The spec is one tool, and then you build tooling or you use tooling around it. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought that one of the weaknesses of spec is, I don't want to say it this way, but it's always been, like I said before, the discussion around it has always been negative. It's always been what you shouldn't do with it. And I wish that there had been more positive guidance on, like, well, it's actually indicating that you shouldn't do that because we think it's a bad idea. You shouldn't have a tool that lets you do that. We think that whole idea is bad. And so you should do this instead, right? So you should, people want to lock down their data structures and have something that says, this map has these keys and no other keys, right? And it's very clear that Cognitect thinks that that's a bad idea. You should never say "and no other keys."
I think they've relented on that though, Eric, in Spec 2.
I think they have too. Yeah, that there's been enough people who have complained about it, they maybe found, or like started pointing out use cases that Cognitect hadn't had in mind.
Yeah, certain systems
And
require closed maps. There's no doubt about it.
right, exactly, right.
Well, yeah, that's why you put something in alpha. Like,
what's that?
that's why you put something in alpha.
Yeah, to be able to change it, yes. But the positive guidance I felt was missing. Like, instead of saying, we think you should do this is how your system should look, and look how Spec matches that, or it facilitates that. It's always just been this like, well, we don't really think you should do that. Like, okay, but what should I be doing? But then you're right. There are tons of systems that, you're integrating with something that requires a certain number of keys and no more. And if you pass something to it that doesn't meet what they're doing on their end, you want to be able to block that. So I think it's true.
One thing that I'd really like to see, that I don't think anything addresses perfectly, and I'm not sure if Malli does either, is when you're doing generative testing and you're generating these values, it can be very slow, and it's really hard to nail down how to generate the actual thing you're looking for. And it looks like Malli
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and pretty much no matter what, you end up running into that could not satisfy predicate such that error.
Yeah.
At random in your CI pipeline.
Right. Can't use such that, but that's what Spec does. So
I would really like to see something address that.
To positively generate them instead of filter them out.
And I don't know if that's possible with the way Spec works. I haven't looked into it at all. It's just something that as I start to use more generative testing, I run into more and more.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a general solution to that. I have a course on generative or property-based testing, and that's one of the first things that we talk about is like, you have to write your own generators, because anything sophisticated, you can't just say like, oh, this string, this is a string and it matches this regex, because already like you're never going to randomly match an email address regex or something. So you need to generate email addresses custom. Of course, Spec lets you do that. It lets you tell it, here's a generator for this spec. But then, of course, as you compose them up into bigger specs, you have the same problem again, because now you need like, I don't know, I can't think of an example. Like you want the email address to match a certain domain name somewhere, like some other field. Like that's not gonna happen randomly.
I really think there's space in the ecosystem for a generative testing tool that does positive generators rather than generators by filtration.
Yeah. I wonder how you could express it, That's the hard part.
Well, we're not going to get any answers here.
No. And it's not time to think about it. We should be talking.
But I think overall, though, I think we can probably all agree, and like they say in the chat as well, it's a very good synthesis of existing ideas, and I think it's really very practical. The only downside with initiatives like this, of course, is that the spread, the distribution, the adoption is inherently kind of limited by the sort of shadow of Spec 2 and stuff like that, and so they're trying to make the value add of this Malli very high, so that if you do make that leap, that investment, then you get a lot of payback, and it does look very good. But it's early days; it's still a very young project, but it already looks pretty exciting. And I think it, fingers crossed, it's going to be good.
Yeah, I fear about fragmentation. That some people are going to be diehard speckers, and some people.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, it's like Mia says, is that Spec will be somewhere in the core, and Malli can be all the kind of like adjunct toolkit on top of it. So I think that's really nice. I think that's what the ecosystem is for.
I think we got used to thinking that there was going to be this kind of split because the split has been Spec versus schema for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't necessarily think that Spec is intended to be a replacement for schema or replacement for something like Malli. I think that it's intended to be to have these tools built around it, which is probably why.
That's what the frustration.
We've been told.
Yeah, but that's the frustration of the alpha label, in fact.
Right.
Because
it's hard to
right, because then you're like, oh, I'm going to put around it, and then
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. If you build all this tooling around it that works really well, and then there's a breaking change.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right. And I mean, people jumped onto Spec so quickly.
Yeah.
I felt like, I guess because it was coming from Cognitect and they felt like they could trust it. But man, people just started using it right away and built it like right into their system.
Yeah, but it's
like
years
deleted
old now.
Schema.
It's years.
Well, now
years
it's
and
years
old.
Now it's what, 4 years?
Yeah, so eventually people are going to use it. I'm sorry, but
yeah. And I feel like
there isn't really a nice alternative. Like for us, as an example, we use a CLJC for data maps between a Clojure client and a Clojure script client and a Clojure server, and it's quite tricky to do that. It's nice to be able to do that when you've got CLJC, when you've got a Clojure script client. The nice thing about Malli, for example, is you could have a JSON schema for a JavaScript client because it uses like OpenDoc, for example. So that's one of the problems with Spec, is that it's very, it's great when you have it's all Clojure, but when it's not all Clojure, you need this ecosystem to build on top of it. So, but for us, actually, Spec is a lifesaver, because if we didn't have these specs and these kind of like little factories that respect those specs to generate the messages in a sort of predictable way, and we can then use the same spec to validate the payloads on the other side, this is a huge win. We never get out of sync.
Yeah, the spec validation is, it's I don't know how people do Kafka without it. Spec validation on Kafka brokers keeps data clean.
Yeah.
And interesting. Because I don't know, I've never
like what's it called, Avro and stuff like that, but you need something. You need some spec of some type.
Right. So Avro's at a different level. It's not at the code level necessarily.
No, that's right.
With Spec you can do it at the Clojure level, because you want the data to get caught before it hits the Kafka broker, because Kafka brokers they just choke and die. Whereas if you catch it before, you can put that message on a dead letter queue, for instance, and deal with it later.
Yeah.
It's irreplaceable as far as I'm concerned.
That's cool.
But I don't think that's what it was intended for. So.
Right. No, and that's the thing. I remember when Spec was first released, there was a Cognicast about it, and Rich was on and was talking about the intentions behind it. And he really was very welcoming about experimentation and using pieces and parts of it, that it's not this monolithic thing that is intended for one use. But that openness of like invitation to experiment, like I really think that there should have been a lot more like positive, like here's a use case, here's a use case. They were obviously thinking about particular use cases and designed it for those.
Yeah, it's funny how they always talk about. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Oh no, I just like, are those written anywhere? I would actually like to know what those use cases were. I haven't looked.
Yeah,
I
I
haven't
don't
seen
know.
any of the talks.
I mean, I don't remember hearing any use cases besides stuff like, testing your functions and things like that. Being able to generate random functions that satisfy the spec. Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen a lot of misuse of spec, what I would call misuse, where people tried to like recreate a static type system almost.
Yes. Yeah.
So they like lock down the design of their system and make every change like really hard. And it's like this fear of not knowing what data you have. That's what it seems like to me. It's like a very protective, like, okay, we figured it out. This is our data. It's like, okay, but now I need something different. Like, oh, you have to change these 20 things. Each little step along the way has its own spec. And
Yeah, I mean, there is a baggage. It's definitely, there is a baggage to this stuff. You don't want to. I don't think you want to add it willy nilly. That's for sure. At the edge of one system, maybe you don't want to go all the way in. That's for sure. That would be weird, I think.
Yeah.
And I think you end up getting into all these kind of arguments about like namespaced keywords and stuff like this. Which is another kind of hornet's nest, really.
Right.
They're not portable.
Yeah. And I think also Spec 2 is supposed to solve some of those problems with the context and stuff. So you don't need quite as many specs because really you have a few specs and a lot of contexts. Anyway, I haven't had like great experiences with Spec in production systems. So I'm still kind of skeptical.
And I've had fantastic experiences with it, but not necessarily using it for what it's supposed to be used for. I don't think that it was intended to be a data validator.
Why not? I mean, it seems like that's in the spec guide. It's absolutely about validating maps.
Right, but I remember someone said we're not supposed to use it for incoming and outgoing Kafka messages.
Really?
There are no laws, so that's bullshit in my opinion.
I know
the thing that I've
really useful for parsing macros.
Sorry, yeah.
I was saying, one of the use cases they talked about was parsing macros.
Well, and I guess I imagine that the new error messages that they put in are like obviously a use case that they had envisioned.
Yes. Yep. I mean, there is actually a spec for these error messages. Yeah.
And I love the explain data. For it makes really nice error messages for you. So if the problem is that something fails spec, explain data spits out a gorgeous error message that explains exactly what failed and how. And that's great. That means you don't have to write those.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It's a low energy day on Apropos today. I don't know what it's like over in New Orleans, but it's like overcast and cold here.
It's muggy. So muggy here. It's foggy. Like you just walk outside, it's like you're inside of a cloud. And it's it's the moisture from the air condensing on your skin mixed with your own sweat. And then it like runs down here. And then it kind of goes and it drips off here and it collects here, and it's not a pleasant day because it's too cool. It's not hot, but it's too cool to run your air conditioner and like suck out all the water. But it's not cold enough to turn on the heater and kind of bake it. So
you're making my plants really happy. Like you're just talking to them. My plants are like, oh yeah, we want that.
We do have a long growing season here. All plants are happy here.
Listen, gang, I think we're getting hugs from the team out there.
Yeah.
slow energy.
Sorry for this low energy show. It's been what, a month for us
I know.
since we've.
And Mike's not here, and so whoops. I think we should like draw it to a close, and we should do next one. We should do as a full REPL episode. I've got a new version of the shared REPL made.
Nice.
So we should be able to use that, and we'll come with some. Anyone that's watching the show now or on YouTube or whatever, you can come to the Discord server. You can come to the general chat and the live show chats, etc. Suggest a few exercises for us. Give us some feedback. And get involved. I think it's very friendly and very open community, which is really nice.
Yeah, we love. I love popping in and seeing people talking. It feels really good. It's nice to feel like there's a community around this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a tired day today.
It's a low energy day for me.
And on that note,
I stayed up till like 1 a.m. working on my book.
Ooh.
So, yeah, and this is like the 3rd day in a row. So,
right.
All right. Well,
it's almost done. It's really close.
That's awesome.
Isn't that like a developer? I mean, I'm always telling everyone that, my code is nearly done. It's like if one of these damn tests would pass,
We lost Eric.
I think he's had enough. Yeah. Low energy. He's like, fuck it. Yeah. Maybe she's going to get his book. I don't know.
Oh, possibly. Yeah. And the kid is finally, the kid sleeps a really long chunk and then wakes up and then sleeps another short chunk.
Right.
So trying to lengthen that.
Yeah.
Sorry, mailman.
You're like, it's like a Jira issue number 1 for Clojure. You're adding chunks. Yeah. Yeah. Callback.
Seeks.
All right. Well, let's all go take a nap.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go. Yeah. Thanks very much for watching, everyone.
All right. Bye, everybody. Remember, you can
Oh yeah.
check out Twitter.
Join us on Discord.
Yes. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.